Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Women in the Spotlight. This series provides us the opportunity to hear from women like us and how they show up as leaders in all aspects of their lives. They will share with us some of the struggles and successes they have had along the way. And today it is my true pleasure to welcome Susan Hensley. And as you will see, Susan is a great powerhouse. She shared with me that she's a passionate global citizen, having traveled to more than 90 countries, which is amazing. She's currently a volunteer coach through Stanford Seed Program, providing strategic business consulting and executive coaching for businesses in Nigeria and Sierra Leone. And Susan truly enjoys reading and hiking and had the opportunity to do a fabulous trip last year, which was, the 4 weeks walking in the Camino Santiago in northern Spain. And throughout her career, Susan has been an experienced leader of global change initiatives, including strategic planning, all aspects of talent management and corporate communication. Susan, it is such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for making the time to do this.
Oh, thank you, Bernadette. I am really, really happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it. So thank you.
So Susan, would you please take a few minutes and tell us more about your leadership journey so the people who listen to us then know you more and better?
Sure. I think my leadership journey began long before I even thought I was on a leadership journey. To be perfectly honest, it's only in the reflection that you realize some of those early professional moments really inform how you show up much later in your life. I think one of the most pivotal moments occurred for me in my first career. I've had two very distinct careers in two fields, and I'm evolving my third career. But my first career, I spent about 11 years in television news. My graduate degree was in journalism, and from the time I was very, very young, I'd won an essay contest even in grammar school. I really wanted to be a journalist. I was excited by that. I felt that would be my offering to the world. And so 1 year out of graduate school, I had an opportunity to move from one small station in Wisconsin to another as the main anchor and producer of the 10 p.m. newscast. And it was a huge step up. And at that young age, I think I was 25, felt like all my dreams were coming true. Now, I wasn't a leader then. I didn't have a staff. I was a anchor and a reporter, and I would produce the 11 o'clock newscast. But I went very happily into a situation that felt like, oh my gosh, I'm on my way. Assuming that the station I was going to was as excited as the sister station I was coming from. We'd had a really great and supportive culture and a lot of mentoring. And I just went in thinking everyone was happy to have me there. That wasn't the case. Television newsrooms can be very competitive environments. And I think I went in a little more blindly and naively than I thought. And after a couple months, I started to receive anonymous notes in my desk because I would do the 5 and 6 o'clock, and then the 10 o'clock news. I would come in mid-afternoon, and I'd get to my desk and the computer, and I would open a drawer, and there would be a note telling me to, go back to the other station and chronicling the mistakes I had made the night before, speaking. And at first, it devastated me. I couldn't believe it because we're all bullied at some point as children growing up. I think that's sadly a very common occurrence, whether it's in preschool or junior high or high school. We get some of that, but there's something when you move into the professional world that I really never thought that would occur. And it took the wind out of my sails, and I felt myself go very, very inward, and I hid it, right? I was embarrassed that these notes were coming, and I didn't know what to do initially. And it took a little bit of time for me to sort of get my grounding, because I could quit. I could suffer in silence. I wasn't sure what to do, but those felt like the first two options, right? It was sort of like I just wanted to hide, and somehow all my fears about maybe not being good enough were being recognized, and they were being recognized by other professionals, not even viewers. If you work at all in public media, you get used to pretty fast viewers will have a lot of opinions about you, and you sort of figure out how to let that go. It still hurts. But because it was coming from coworkers and it was anonymous, I did two things which have helped me for the rest of my life and really have informed my leadership journey. First is, as much as it hurt, I recognized in this chronicling of mistakes that I had made the night before, thoughts, I could get better. I didn't need to be perfect, but within my circle of influence, right? I couldn't stop this, whoever it was, from writing these notes, but I could not repeat some of the same mistakes. Whether I mispronounced a name or whatever, I could get better. So I actually hired a speech coach. I was raised in California, and as I said, I was working in Wisconsin at this point, and my California accent, I was probably not saying some of the Wisconsin words in the right way. So I found a speech coach, and I worked on getting better. That started to give me a little bit of confidence. I also originally went to my boss for help. Sadly, he sort of shrugged his shoulders and didn't want to deal with it. So I saw a really poor leader. I sort of vowed to myself that I would never do that. He had things going on in his personal life and just didn't have the capacity, and sort of said, ignore it. I sat with myself and what we learn about bullies, and it's like, well, no, in my circle of influence, I can do something. So I set up one-on-one meetings with the staff. It was not a large room, and I laid out the notes, and I said, I've been getting these. I don't know if you wrote them or not. This isn't about whether you did. It's about it's not professional. So if you know who wrote them, if you wrote them, please, the feedback should come to my face. And also, I did not hire myself for this job. So the go back to where you came from isn't even in my circle of influence. You're picking on the wrong person. No one ever admitted to having written them. The notes did stop. So the getting better, once I was calm, really doing these one-on-one meetings where it wasn't accusatory. I wasn't trying to do, I got you. It was, this is not okay. This isn't how I expect to be treated, nor how I will treat you. Because I wasn't accusatory. It was, but I can take this to my face, and I was not the decision maker. So also trying to even separate who's accountable. Inadvertently, I stumbled through those things. It was extremely painful. I had some stress illnesses during this time, but as I reflect on this period, and I only stayed there 9 months, I actually started to look for another job, because that's a toxic culture. I will be really honest. Although I learned to stand up for myself, there were a lot of red flags. I was able to get another job in a much bigger market. Ironically, I moved there, met my husband. It's been 33 years. So it was good for me to leave, but I never have forgotten those lessons, because at 24 and 25, during that period, I turned 25 while I was there, I didn't have support. I didn't have skills. They did not teach me this in graduate school. Previous bullying on a playground or at 6th grade camp had actually not prepared me for it. But ever since then, through 9 more years in television, and then 24 years in human resources and strategic planning at a large corporation, it's really helped me to both own what I need to own. I can always get better, and to create a boundary around around myself and how I expect to be treated.
This was really, I mean, a challenging situation at the very beginning of your career, right, Susan? And as you said, this really had shaped, without necessarily knowing it at that time, who you've become and how you've developed as a leader as well down the road, right? So those lessons that you're talking about, what can you do? You mentioned in my circle of influence, and then, how do I get better after this? How would you say that those two highlights, if you want, have showed up later on in your development and your next career? Because I know that you mentioned about two big careers in your journey.
Yeah. So they have showed up every single rotation I've done. It's interesting when you look back. Yes, after spending a total of about 11 years in television news, for some personal reasons, my husband and I chose to make a career shift. And I ended up starting to work in organizational development for a very large consumer products goods company. And I had a number of rotations through there, but I was always more comfortable in the training, organizational development, coaching, large project facilitation. And I had an opportunity, probably after I'd been there about 15 years, so I had a lot of success. I was asked to lead strategic planning for the organization. It was going to be a new process. And we were working with some outside consultants. And so I was being asked to do something, and I was excited about it. But I don't have an MBA. And I really don't have, or I didn't have, so I want to be careful here, a strong finance background. I'd really run from finances. And so all these images in my head came up about all the things I didn't have to do this job. And I started to go down a path of, okay, I need to get better. I need to take finance classes, or I need to get a night MBA. I really went down that I was not qualified for it. And that was in my head, right? Because the job's moving forward, but I'd lost a lot of my energy and confidence. And one day it hit me, right? I try and do a lot of reflection, morning journaling, that if I get curious, because I've used this about why me here, why am I being chosen, and showing up with, I'm willing to get better. If you say, I need finance classes, I am always willing to get better. But the why now, what are you seeing? And the answer that came back was, we have a huge and talented finance department. We have a robust MBA recruiting program, ironically, that I used to run when I was in recruiting. And I think that's what got in my head. If that's what we wanted, there's lots of people who can do that. What we want is someone to help navigate the organization, lead a project through the various interests within the organization, and facilitation skills. But if I hadn't really asked, I would have spent all of my time trying to be a finance person, because I was so afraid of being seen lacking and being like discovered after having been there 15 years as faulty, right? So that unfortunately can stick with you, that little bit of doubt. And that's where the curiosity, coupled with what I'll call one of the core values at my last employer was humility, just the openness to say, I don't have these skills. Do I need to get them? Not, I will never learn them. Not like, I can't, but what are we talking about here? Because we both want the same thing, right? You and your organization and you and a future employer are always aligned in that the organization and you want success. No one hires for failure. No one seeks failure, but I think we forget that in getting so armored up. So that agency, if you will, the curiosity, the what's in my influence, which is to ask those questions, served me really well. And it really led to several other great assignments, including an expat assignment that if I hadn't been willing to take a job where I was scared of failure again, because it felt like, oh my gosh, what's about to happen? Is this all those years ago when I was moved into a position? You get triggers and you realize, no, I'm a different person. I'm a stronger person. I'm not that same 24 and 25-year-old.
You mentioned something that is wonderful, Susan, is that quite often, and I see that and I hear that quite often with women who I work with, is very often when we are, in a specific role, we say, well, I don't have, or we question ourselves, right? Yeah. We question, or we're guessing ourselves, double guessing, and saying, sometimes we don't feel qualified, we don't have the right skills and all of that. But because we tend to look at this more from that point of view versus if somebody asks you to take that role, is obviously,
yes,
they believe you can succeed in that role. Yeah. Right. But we don't remind ourselves of this enough. And that, I think what you're sharing here is such a great reinforcement that there's a reason why you're here, that you have talents that others don't have. And that's why you've been asked. Yeah. But we're so hard on ourselves, right, Susan?
So yeah, we are so hard on ourselves. And, I've done a lot of work in the, diversity and equity and inclusion space. And we've talked a lot about being the only. And at my age, I was sometimes the only. And I realized there's two ways of looking at being the only, or one of two, or whatever it is. One is, I'm the only and I shouldn't speak up and I'm scared. The other is, but I'm here. I am here, and it almost becomes imperative to speak up. I realize we're also aware of the things that we say that didn't come out as well, or that were a mistake, and you feel that. I've really watched groups. Part of my background in facilitation is to watch groups, and when people are confident, or when they don't feel at all threatened, mistakes just roll off people. They can be told 6 times in an hour, you're wrong. But if they feel supported and that's it, they're not going home, driving home, thinking of all those 6 times. Mm-hmm. But when you lack that confidence, every one of those stings, and there's a toggle, there's a balance between leaders needing to create spaces where every voice can be heard. And also, when you are holding yourself back, pushing yourself out.
You are
right.
Right.
And I have struggled with that my whole life, because it doesn't feel good. But I will tell you, as I reflect on what's 2 careers now, I don't regret any of the dumb things I said. I really, really don't. I regret the chances I didn't take when I could have leaned forward more, because there are plenty of days that I've kicked myself for saying something. So it's not that the little sting isn't there. The regret of not having used my voice or taken the chance and just been wrong. I make lots of mistakes all day long, and I can laugh about them, but not to show that more authentically of myself are things I've regretted, not to bring, if you will, that sort of ability to try and just model that it's okay to make a mistake.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And and it's what, so how often do we hear, oh, they have lots of experience, whoever we try to say. Yes. And quite often I say, and how do you think they really acquired that experience?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly. Because we are all human beings, and we just have to learn. Yes. Making mistakes and understanding you're absolutely right. It's okay. And don't you feel, Susan, is by really embracing this behavior and this mindset, it actually allows us to become such a better leader. Yes. Of our teams and organization, because they realize they're not just the perfect woman or superwoman, right? Yes. It's because now we're becoming that much more relatable and personable, and that's what I believe is what makes us better leaders. Would you agree?
Oh, I completely agree that to be able to show that the vulnerability and to share humanizes us. I actually think one of the most dangerous things we can do as women leaders is to ever imply that we're perfect. Decades ago, there was this image of she can do it all. You know, there was a famous commercial, I think when I was a little girl, about you should bring home bacon fried up in the pan, you'd have a baby, and that you needed to do it all. I think that's a horrible, horrible burden put on women on every front, because it's very hard and it's very messy. And I think the more open we are to show the struggle, the more we humanize ourselves.
Yes. Right.
Back to the very first situation with the anonymous notes. When I called people in, I didn't cry, I didn't accuse, but I said, this hurts to come to work and know that your coworkers are doing this. It's not okay. I believe it humanized me in a different way versus just being this person who showed up that they could be mean to. I think, unfortunately, it's a lot of what we see on could happen on social media. The minute you do start to humanize and to own, teams are more willing to work for you. I'll be perfectly honest. I've never seen a team that doesn't want to jump in for each other, right? That's why I love teams. Teams are amazingly powerful things when it comes to that sharing, because people understand when you're weak, I can be strong. When you're tired, I might have energy. And then they know that same grace will get extended to them. And we just feel much less alone, right? Life does not get lived alone. So
Susan, my goodness, thank you so much. You've shared some wonderful insights here, and really for tapping into your experience and sharing that with the people who are listening here. To close out our discussion, let me ask you one final question.
Sure.
I'm having worked with and working with so many women leaders, very often what I see is that they share that they feel alone on their journey, right? And they're having a hard time asking for help. What advice can you give them?
Oh, so it sounds terrible. You've got to ask for help. It's that being vulnerable. I went through what I first went through alone. Was alone. Ever since then, I've never gone through any other challenge alone. I've been fortunate enough to have terrific mentors, women and men, terrific bosses, once again, women and men. And other than that first experience when my news director didn't support me and I felt so abjectly alone, you have got to reach out. It's, you're telling yourself a much scarier story than anyone else. That's the other thing, is the stories we tell ourselves in our head. And I've done a lot of work. There's a few people I like, are scarier and meaner than what is happening. And to not take some sort of partner or confident when you're experiencing it, I think really makes the road a lot harder. So if at all possible, reach out to someone, even a therapist, mental health professional, depending on what it is, but a coworker, a friend, a mentor. People love to be asked for help. I think it's the highest compliment I can be paid is for someone to say, can you be a sounding board? Can you listen to this? If they ever thank me for that, I say, no, that the honor is really mine. And it is. And I think I am not alone in that. It's hard to do, but that is my, if someone says, one piece of advice, it would really, don't struggle alone.
Wonderful. Thank you. I so much agree with you. So again, thank you, Susan, for being with us and sharing all your experience. It's been such a pleasure. And to everyone who is listening, I hope you gain insights and ideas that can support you in your success. And again, Susan, Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I know that many women who are listening to that and men who are listening to that, we just said, oh my gosh, we have some wonderful here insights from Susan.
Well, thank you and best of luck. And we can all do so much more than we think we can. That's the blessing of our lives, is I think we are really capable of much more.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Thank you,
Susan.
Bernadette.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.